Hello, my name is Johana Knowles and I work in visitor services at Alice Holt Forest, but I'm also studying full-time for a master's degree in illustration at Kingston University. I am at the end of a bit of a cold, so you may have to bear with me a little bit. I identify as a researcher maker and am very interested in how creative research methods can be employed to elevate a making process and ultimately produce work that is socially impactful. I'm very interested in landscape storytelling and I'm currently exploring how landscape informs collective identity. I'm also very attuned to the question of audience and exhibition space, and this is what we will be focusing on in this session. I feel that a lot of fine art and gallery space can feel quite inaccessible and sterile. Performance spaces for music and sound art share some of these issues of inclusivity as well. Creative inquiry should be fun and benefit a diverse range of people, not just other creatives. The way that work is discussed by the maker, as well as interpretation material, the title of the piece, where the work is exhibited, all inform how impactful the work ultimately is. At Alice Holt, we have quite a specific audience. Obviously, you are responding to the forest in your own projects, and the extent to which you want to think about audience is totally up to you. So, who is this audience? Primarily, we're talking about families with small children, and the picture at the top right exemplifies our classic visitor. Typically a mum, probably in her 30s or 40s, with a couple of kids, probably a dog as well. I've identified a breakdown of different customer profiles from most prolific at the top to least prolific at the bottom. You might decide that your work is not intended for the visitors we have here, and actually being on site or having some physical experience of the site isn't important for understanding your work. That's totally fine, but equally, it could be a good opportunity for people to see your work if you wanted to harness the audience we already have here. Okay, interactivity. Is there a way that an audience can creatively engage with the work? Are they a passive listener or viewer, or is there some kind of dialogue between them as an audience and you as a maker? These are some interactive elements that we have on site. Gruffalo sculptures, which are brightly coloured and tactile, a collaborative mapping trail, which I designed for Easter, and interactive activity panels. Obviously, these are all aimed at children, and we definitely lack in an interpretive offer for adults on site. A typical exhibition space is probably a gallery or a performance space, perhaps a gig venue for sound art. How can traditional exhibition spaces be modified or improved? How could you have more creative control over that space? The classic single line hang, which we are familiar with in galleries, first originated in the National Gallery in London in the 1880s, and the craft of exhibiting has come a long way since then. You might exhibit your work outdoors, in a box, on a website, in a publication. These are all really interesting ways of disseminating your work and perhaps moving outside of traditional curation culture. These alternative methods might afford you more control over the way that your work is seen. It might also be important to think about the future of the work beyond this summer school. What are you going to get out of this project? And what is the impact of the work? Who needs it? Why is it important? There's an interesting discussion to be had around whether museums and galleries should be educational spaces or whether in fact they're better considered as sites of pilgrimage or also almost worship, where the art is experienced purely for its own merit and that rather than imparting information, that art is about changing your emotional state. Now, I'm going to talk about some projects I feel are relevant to the Sensing the Forest ethos. All of these examples are aligned with the discipline of illustration research, which of course is my area of practice too. The growth of research-based illustration practice signifies the emergence of a new type of research-focused maker who is socially curious, multidisciplinary, collaborative, and able to blend a making process within a critical framework. Firstly, I want to talk about Leah Fusco. She's very interested in place and this question of placemaking. So, how you might use research tools to construct meaning around a site. She uses a lot of documentary methods and translates her research visually through drawing, film, and installation. A really interesting data-led multidisciplinary maker. Kate Morrell. I met Kate at the Small Publishers Fair in London a couple of years ago. She's another very interesting visual communicator and academic. She works with a lot of archive material and contributes to museum exhibitions. Her process involves kind of picking key artefacts out of collections and then reinterpreting them. So in one project from 2015, Luster, she was looking at bronze materials in the collection at Kendal Museum in Cumbria. She brought these objects together in a publication and actually used bronze pigments to print the book. The more the book is held, the more it tarnishes, as any bronze object will. Although the audience in this case can't touch the collection, the act of physically engaging with the artefacts is mimicked, and hence that tactile connection to heritage is achieved. Laura Copsey originally trained as an art therapist and now is very much part of the illustration establishment. For this project, New River Folk, she collaborated with Philip Crewe to curate an exhibition of objects they produced in response to months of research into the site of the new Centre for Illustration in London. The site is actually the riverhead for a man-made waterway, supplying fresh drinking water to London for over 400 years. The project inspired a fascination with water and the social history of waterways in London. She combined creative research methods with traditional archival methods and used speculative fictions to tell the story of this site. Louise Vormitag conducted this project at Elephant and Castle a few years ago now, leading collaborative mapping workshops to try to visualise the social connections within the borough. Her aim was to capture the idiosyncratic stories of this place before it was about to be transformed by a huge redevelopment project. It forms a time and place-specific snapshot of collective memory. David's one of my all-time favourite creatives. He probably belongs more to a tradition of graphic design, but his approach is really interesting because it's site-based and very interested in participatory research methods. His work draws on lots of traditional mapping imagery to create these really intricate, almost collaged printed maps that have no function in terms of wayfinding or property ownership, as we would normally think of a map. Rather, they are very much repositories of experience of place. He also runs workshops and invites his audience to creatively engage with his work through on-site map-making activities. The audience has agency and is able to make decisions about how they engage with the work. This removes some of that hierarchy between artist and audience. Right, this is the last slide that I'll be showing you today. Pollinator Pathmaker is a fascinating project by an ecologist and artist called Dr. Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg. Her research aim for this project was to understand whether it was possible to use AI to create artwork that exhibited empathy. She wanted to make a tool that could be used creatively to offer a practical way of tackling the climate emergency and also facilitate discussion around this issue. The result is an interactive map that enables the user to build their own garden from the point of view of a pollinator. It's completely brilliant and ingenious, but also inherently playful. I think when you're trying to ask audiences to engage with subjects that are difficult to talk about and perhaps not inherently visual, playfulness and humour goes a really long way. If an audience can feel empowered, like they have some sort of ownership over the work, or actually enjoy the process of engaging with it, that is ultimately going to make the work so much more successful. Okay, so hopefully this presentation has prompted some thoughts about how you could think about audience and alternative methods of curating in your own work. I know that most of you are sound artists, so perhaps some of the visual references aren't so relevant to your practices, but hopefully there was something interesting there for you all. Okay, thank you very much. Hopefully I'll be able to join you in a future session very soon. All right, thank you. Bye.